Hey travelers, welcome back to the channel. Recently I had a friend in town who had never been to Asheville before, so I was able to take her to the breathtaking Biltmore Mansion in Asheville, North Carolina. This place has 250 rooms and over 4 acres of floor space just inside the manor, and it's the largest private residence in America. It truly reminds me of Downton Abbey to walk around this estate. So come along with us as we wander around. We left the kids at home this trip, though we are definitely still a couple of sweaty moms on this 95-degree day, and we are also answering the question of if this historic estate is a good option for a family-friendly adventure or if it's better suited for adults only. Biltmore Estate is the largest privately owned house in the United States. It was built by George Washington Vanderbilt in the late 1800s, and when you're visiting Asheville with its rich history and just the crazy amazing architecture, it's a must-see spot to tour. So our legitimate question is, can you explore this massive estate with kids in tow, or is that a recipe for disaster with all of the formal rooms and fancy decor? Exploring the estate can take a full day, if not more. It's a popular weekend destination. It's got multiple lodging options on site. You cannot stay in the actual Biltmore house. That would be nice though. Biltmore even offers a season pass because there's just plenty to see, and there are ever-changing artist installations and themed displays. During this visit, the glass artist Chihuly was featured. Visited in the past when the house was filled with Christmas trees, including a giant one in the dining room, as well as during a time when the costumes of the show Downton Abbey were displayed throughout the house, and that was really cool. With so much to see, it's definitely easy to feel overwhelmed, but it's totally doable if you only have one day. That's all we had. In addition to the house, there are massive gardens and greenhouses that you could spend hours in, plus an entire village to experience, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So is this really a kid-friendly activity? Let's take a look around and you can help decide. All right, let's start our tour. Our tickets included an audio tour, which was really great. You just punch in numbers depending on what room you're in. It was offered in multiple languages, and there is a kids version. It's given by Cedric, the family dog. This estate also has a restaurant named Cedric's Tavern, which has casual food, and that was named after the family dog as well. First up is one of my favorite places in the house. It's called the Winter Garden, and it's the first thing you see when you walk in through the massive doors. This is where I would spend all my time in the house if it was up to me, but you can kind of see there are actually cranks on and poles that go all the way up to the top windows to open those up. The tour then takes you through the billiard room, and this was a place where people hung out and played games, played billiards. It also served as a smoking room and a place for men to discuss their business after dinner. The walls had trophies, there were stuffed animals, and the furniture is one of the things that in every room is just incredibly detailed. The Banquet Hall is one of the most impressive rooms in the entire mansion. It has 70-foot high ceilings, tapestries from the 1500s, and a massive triple fireplace. There are even hidden doors that the servants would come in and out of that are worked right into the wall, so you can't even see them when they're closed. And you've got this huge stone artwork over the fireplace on one side, and the other end of the hall up in the balcony is a grand organ that someone would be playing music on during dinners. Now you walk through this Tapestry Gallery on your way to and from the library, which we'll see in a moment, and the Tapestry Gallery is a huge collection of different items that George Vanderbilt collected on his travels around the world, and then the tapestries are from the 16th century. Each tapestry tells a story, and apparently these were in place and put up in very early days of building the Biltmore, so they've been here the entire time and were hand-picked before the building plans were even created. Next up is the library, which is it's a toss-up between the Winter Garden and the library, which one is actually my favorite room in the house. But there are over 10,000 books in here. George Vanderbilt was an avid reader. He collected books on his travels as well, and if you check out this ceiling painting, it's called the Chariot of Aurora. This was actually created elsewhere. He had this taken apart, shipped to his home, and then reinstalled on the ceiling of the library. The outside of this entire estate is just as impressive as the inside. Between the details and the stonework and learning about how this forest was actually planted intentionally for how it was going to look in 100 years was really interesting to learn about. Let's head upstairs and we can check out the bedrooms. These bedrooms are ridiculous. So George Vanderbilt's bedroom is darker reds, warmer colors. If you look into the mirrors at the right angle in his bedroom, you can actually even see into the bathroom and see the tub. And as was customary for the time, his wife Edith had her own rooms, and those were decorated much more lightly yellow, very French influence. I know next to nothing about historical art and architecture, but I could walk into that room and tell you that it looked very French. The room was amazing in how it was oval and round shaped, and even the doors to the room and the doors to the closets were rounded and curved. Even the wallpaper in all of these rooms was very delicate, textured. Some of it was velvet, some of it was embossed leather. No expense was spared when putting the decor into place. When the house was built, George Vanderbilt wasn't married yet. He was still a bachelor, so he built it with many, many different, I want to say there were like 24 different rooms for guests to come stay in. So there were amazing rooms with state-of-the-art indoor plumbing, ensuite bathrooms, which was unusual for this time in history, but something that George Vanderbilt insisted on during construction. One of the mysteries of the house is actually that none of the documentation, journals, diaries, notes on construction actually say where the Vanderbilt's daughter slept, so we weren't actually able to tour which was her bedroom, but we did get to see this really interesting basement area called the Halloween room. Though it had nothing to do with Halloween, it was actually decorated by the daughter Cornelia for a New Year's Eve party that was bat themed, so she invited everyone over. And we got to see some of the more recreational areas of the house as well, including a bowling alley, and there's an alcove in back where servants actually were stationed to reset the pins and send the balls back. And then one of the coolest features of the house was seeing the swimming pool, and we learned that swimming was not done recreationally at that time. It was actually more of a health and fitness activity. Outside of the pool area, there was the gymnasium, and we learned that the pool had to be filled and drained basically each time you wanted to use it. There was underwater lighting set up in there and a diving area. It was really interesting to see in the house, and definitely unexpected the first time I took a tour of the house. The estate obviously would have had a massive amount of staff to help run it. Servants lived in modest quarters, but it was also noted that some lived locally and just came to work during the day and went back to their own houses. The servants in this area of the house were the female servants, and they all had their own rooms, which was unique for the time apparently. The male servants were housed, I believe, near the horse stables or over the horse stables, so they weren't actually near the kitchen where these rooms were. The kitchen was huge by any standards, but not as big as we thought it would have been for the amount of food they must have been cooking for parties and things like that. But they did have it set up into different stations where there was a room for canning and a room for doing flower arrangements and a room for polishing silver, and then there was a really big kitchen with sinks and carving stations, a separate rotisserie kitchen where all of the meats were being cooked, and that was separate because of the heat that was produced. After you tour the servants' areas, you are basically at the end of the tour, but it's not the end of what you can do on Biltmore Estate at all. Obviously, there are beautiful gardens that you can tour through. There are actually different ponds. Some of them have fish in them. The greenhouses themselves were like magical jungles with plants I had never seen before. There was even a cactus greenhouse, rose gardens, arbors to walk under and walk through. It's a beautiful area, and you could honestly just come and enjoy that. It's like a botanical garden without actually even going into the house. So when you leave the house, there are some different things you can do. You can actually have something to eat. There's a casual kind of walk up, get sandwiches and hot dogs type place outside in the courtyard. There's a restaurant next to the gift shops that was actually built where the horse stables were, and you can sit in the different stables. They're now converted into restaurant tables and booths, and that's a really fun place to eat. And then of course you have the gardens to walk around, and then you can hop back in your car and drive to Antler Hill Village. This is a really cute, charming area within the estate, and it offers even more to explore. You'll find the winery here. There's a farmyard that has animals. On the weekends they do sheep herding demonstrations, and then they have the Biltmore Legacy Museum, which shows exhibits on the Vanderbilt family history, and it's also nice and air conditioned. You can relax, enjoy some time, sit down, watch a little movie. We actually learned about how the Vanderbilts were supposed to be on the Titanic, and at the last minute changed their mind and took a different ship so that they could get home sooner and avoided tragedy there. We were able to walk around and really just enjoy the place, and we finished off the day with some old-fashioned games and wondering how quickly our kids would have been bored of them. But to answer that question, I think the Biltmore can be done with kids. I think that you're going to know your kids best, and if they're going to be really interested in what's going on or really bored by it. It is not the most stroller-friendly place, and while there are 2 working elevators that were built into the Biltmore at the time that the entire structure was built, there sometimes were lines to use the elevators. I wouldn't count on being able to bring a stroller through. We actually saw a lot of people being directed to park their strollers at the door. So again, it depends on if your kid can walk around, and all of the rooms are roped off, so there are walkways you're allowed on, and you're not actually going into the room. So unless your kid's going to duck under the ropes, I don't think you need to worry about them grabbing something and breaking something. But I think it's more of a case of, are they old enough to be interested, or would they be a little bit bored with what's going on? We spent about 2 hours inside the house touring, and we might have stayed longer or walked through a little bit slower if it wasn't such a hot day. But it's important to note that you're not allowed to bring outside food and beverage into the house. You are allowed to bring a clear plastic water bottle, and you would have to either have that yourself or purchase it before you go into the house. There's nowhere to get anything to drink inside the house, no water fountains, water bottle filling stations, anything like that. So being that it was 95 degrees outside, they did actually have some air conditioning systems hooked up to try to push some air through the house, and it was cooler than the last time we went in summer, but it's not something where it was super comfortable to be in, especially in a crowd of people where you're just sort of all milling around and walking through the house slowly. So take into consideration hydration and heat as well when you're considering if you want to bring kids or not. Walking around the estate and the gardens, especially in Antler Hill Village, I think are a lot more kid-friendly. I think that, first of all, the gardens would be an amazing place to take family pictures, but Antler Hill Village actually had activities and things geared towards presenting them to kids. They had local artisans there, things that you were allowed to climb on, games you were encouraged to be hands-on and played, and the artisans were there interacting and engaging with people, telling them how they were doing their crafts. There was a blacksmith there. There were some women making baskets, and it was really interesting to see in here. I think that would have been a more fun/educational opportunity. There was even a table with some coloring stuff that you could check out and sit your kids out while you were checking out the video that might have been a little more boring for them. So I think overall it's something that you could take kids to, but it's going to depend on your kid and your kid's interest level and attention span. And I think that if you wanted to leave the kids home, you could definitely have a very enjoyable day, evening, afternoon, walk through the house and take a little bit more time without having to worry about keeping kids happy. So there are also a lot of bike trails, horseback riding, places to walk your dog. So we saw families that had their bikes there. You do need to have tickets to even enter the grounds at all. So I imagine those were season pass holders that were bringing their bikes and their kids to enjoy the area and the facilities. But this is definitely a place that's just a testament to the Gilded Age and years gone by, and I think it's an amazing place to visit and see, and definitely a must-see spot when you come to Asheville. So thanks for joining me on this tour of the Biltmore Mansion and Estate. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button, share your favorite room in the comments, and subscribe to my channel channel for more travel adventures, and we will see you next time. Safe travels, everyone.